Hey, it's Dan from MoGraphicHandy.com, and thanks for hitting play on this video, Introduction to Adobe Illustrator for Motion Graphics Artists. I created this video basically to just distill Adobe Illustrator down to the basics that a motion graphic artist may need to get started. When I first learned Illustrator, I actually learned from a book probably about 10 years ago, and now there's tons of tutorials online, and especially on lynda.com. Hours upon hours taught by great instructors, but sometimes it just might be too much. Everything in Illustrator a motion graphic artist doesn't probably need to know, and sitting through 5 hours of training just to learn about strokes and dashes on strokes might be a little bit overwhelming. So I wanted to create a video to just get down to the nitty gritty, and then once you get these principles down, you can move on to training like that to expand your abilities in Adobe Illustrator. So let's get started with what you need to know when using Adobe Illustrator for motion graphics. The goal of this exercise is to create HUD graphics or scopes or viewfinders in Adobe Illustrator that you can bring into After Effects or Cinema 4D and animate. This gives us the perfect opportunity to work with shapes and strokes in Illustrator to demonstrate various techniques. Launch Illustrator and create a new document. Make sure you're working in RGB because CYMK is irrelevant for using in motion graphics. In fact, you can choose pretty much any size you want as a starter and then copy and paste it into an HD frame later. You can also ignore the bleed settings because that's only relevant to printing. Let's draw our first shape in Illustrator. Go up to the shape tool here, and let's just choose Polygon tool and draw out a shape. Now we have an outline here, it's really thin, and we can change that stroke width by going up to stroke and just increasing the size. Now it may look like we just have a line, but we actually have a white fill within this shape as indicated by this fill color up here. Let's go to View, Show Transparency Grid, and you'll see that we certainly have a fill within inside this shape. So if you want an empty shape, go up to the fill color, choose this none hash, go to your tool, Polygon tool, drag out the shape, and now you have just a stroke. Shapes are made up of strokes and fills, and you can have either or. So let's turn off the stroke on this shape. Now we just have an outline. Let's just fill it with a color. Common tools that you will be using in your motion graphics projects that originate in Illustrator are the Align tool and the Pathfinder tool. The Align tool aligns objects and distributes them as you tell it. Let's select all these shapes and align them vertically. Now that those shapes are aligned, we can distribute them horizontally by using the Distribute tab. Let's choose Horizontal Distribute Center. And now all those shapes are evenly spaced. Cycle through these other Align Objects functions to just see how each of these different options affect how your objects line up in the scene. Let's quickly go over the Pathfinder function, which will enable you to make additional shapes that aren't available under your shape tools. Basically, you can draw out two shapes and combine them into whatever kind of shape that you want. Let's take this rectangle, overlap this circle, select them both, and let's go over to our Pathfinder shape mode. The first one, Unite. Let's click it, and it creates a new shape out of the two, creating one path for all of it. Let's undo. If you select both and hold down the Alt Option key on a Mac and hold down the shape mode, Unite, it does the same thing, but now you can double click into this original shape and move it around, and essentially it's a live effect that you can adjust after the fact. The other shape modes include minus front, which takes the top line shape and subtracts it from the bottom. So now you know how to make Pac-Man. And then there's also the intersect mode, which takes the intersection of the two shapes. So now you know how to make a slice of pizza. The exclude shape mode is better demonstrated by using shapes with fills. Let's take this blue circle, drag it into the center of this red circle, select both of them, and hit exclude. And basically it's a subtraction that the top subtracts the middle of the bottom. So using the Pathfinder is pretty similar. Let's select both these objects and go to divide. An operation occurred. Let's deselect. You'll notice you can pull apart all these pieces and basically divide anything that was intersecting into 3 separate parts. The trim tool is pretty much like a subtract. Let's combine those, select them, hit trim. You'll notice, double click in, pull out, that's subtracted from the circle. Merge is similar to trim. Select both, merge. You'll notice that when both these shapes are the same color and you do an overlap, select them, and use the merge function, it merges anything that is the same color into one shape. Crop is very similar to the intersect in that it's cropping anything outside that's not shared in the shapes. Outline just creates an outline of the two shapes. And the last one, minus back, subtracts anything that is behind the top layer. Another feature that you can use in Illustrator to help you with motion graphics and HUD design is using the fonts available on your computer to help you build out certain HUD elements. You can especially use things like Wingdings and other non-traditional fonts to help you build out additional shapes. So I have the alphabet and numeric characters spelled out here. Let's just go ahead and change this to Webdings 3. And now we have a bunch of different shapes that we can use. At the same time, we can Alt drag to copy that, select it again. Let's go to Webdings. And we have even more shapes that we can use that are built into this font. So say you like this little plane right here. Let's copy that, delete this out, go to my type tool, paste, got this plane, I'm going to enlarge this. So you can either keep this plane as is, but if you know that this is what you want, or maybe you want to make some modifications to this, what you can do is take this, go up to type, and since this is a font, go to create outlines, and now you have paths to work with. So you can select that, change the stroke now to a yellow, increase it, change the color to blue. Let's go ahead and undo that. The other advantage is that now you can go in with your direct selection tool and manipulate those points even more. Let's go through the steps of building out a simple HUD element such as a scope or tracking device. I'm going to start with the type tool. I'm going to choose Helvetica. You can choose whatever font you want. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a bracket to the scene and then another bracket. I'm going to space those out. I'm going to make this be the center of what I'm building out here. Right away I'm going to go up to type, create outlines, and that makes those separate. I'll go ahead and enlarge those using Shift and Alt to just make it slightly larger. Again, I can always adjust this to whatever size I want, and it'll always stay sharp because it's a vector graphic. Next, I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. I'm going to go up to my fill, make that none, and I'll make it a black stroke. And I'll go ahead and draw a circle. Increase the stroke width. Start at 6 or 7. And you'll notice how we're off-centered here. So I'm going to select all this. Let's go ahead and do a horizontal align, then a vertical align. Then I'm going to shift these brackets back over. I'm going to select the outer stroke again, hit Control C. Then I'm going to go Edit, Paste in Place. I'm going to scale this down to the center, and I'll change the stroke width down to 2 or 3. We'll go with 2 on this. Select it one more time, Control C, paste in place so it's directly over the top, scale it down one more time, but this time I'm going to switch out, put a fill in, and I'm going to turn off the stroke. Go ahead and scale it down just a bit. So this outer stroke will be the outer ring of our element. I'm going to select again, Control C, Edit, Paste in Place, scale this new stroke in. I'm going to change the stroke to 4. Now, I actually want this to be a dashed line. In fact, I want it to be a horizontal dashed line. So what we need to do is go into our Appearance button over here and select Stroke. And a whole bunch of options come up here. There is an option to check dashed lines. So let's go ahead and enable that. And we have dashed lines. And you'll notice, select this again, that we've got 100 dash and 100 gap. What happens if we change this to 5? And then maybe this to 5. We get a lot more dashes. So the dash length and the dash gap help determine what your dashes look like within your document. Let's change this to 25. We'll change the gap to 75. However, I want more vertical looking hashes. So we'll go to Stroke, change the dash to 2. And we'll increase the weight. And now we have vertical dashes. Let's say you're happy with how these hash marks are looking, but you want to scale in this whole circle. So you grab a corner, hold down Shift and Alt, just scale on in. And you'll notice that the characteristics of this stroke have changed based on the scaling. We'll undo that, and you'll see a lot more hash marks up here, opposed to when you scaled it in. Let's undo one more time. So the way to preserve those hash marks, depending on scaling, is to go up to Illustrator, Preferences, General, and make sure you have Scale, Strokes, and Effects enabled. Now when you scale this, those strokes scale proportionally. We aren't done yet. We need to add more detail to this HUD element. Let's select this outer stroke again, copy it, Command C, I'm going to go to Edit, Paste in Place, and scale it in. Now I want to go back into my stroke appearance. I want this stroke to actually just be a bunch of dots. So the way you get dots is enable the dash line, and then you want to make these dashes and this gap approximately the same. Now we have what appears to be squares along this path. And to more evenly distribute these, go ahead and select Align Dashes to Corners and Path Ends. To round this, you just have to choose a round gap. Now, it looks like a capsule, so clearly we need to adjust the dash. Let's change the dash to 2. 1. Increase the gap to, let's say, 30. And there. Adjust the stroke size to make them smaller. And now we have our dots. Let's say that you want to include a targeting system that includes triangles. Well, if you go up to this shape tools here, you don't see triangles. Let's go to our polygon tool, just create a shape, but before letting go of your mouse, hit the up and down arrows and you can add more sides or decrease them. And that's how we get a triangle. Let's go ahead and make a black fill on this. Let's remove the stroke. Bring it into position here. Shrink it down. I'm going to select this center circle and then my triangle. Do a vertical line. Then I'm going to grab the triangle and this outer circle. Do a top line. And now I can grab this triangle, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to repeat that process for all the way around. And now with those triangles, we have a more accurate targeting system. Let's add some type to the scene. Select this outer path, Command C, paste in place, scale it down to the outside of these hash marks. I'm going to turn down the stroke. Let's just turn it up to 1 so we can see it. Then I'm going to go to our type tool, type on path tool. And I'm just going to type in some numbers. And it's simple as that, is typing numbers on a path. One thing you'll want to keep in mind if you're sharing this document with someone who might not have your fonts, you can go up to select your type, create outlines. So those characters are individually able to be manipulated, and most of all, you don't need that specific font on your computer. Let's add one more detail to this. Select the outer stroke, Command C to copy it, paste in place, scale it in, just overlap these numbers, change the stroke down to 2. Let's go into our stroke options, enable dashed line, play with a couple settings here. Just increase this out just a bit. And that should do it. One last thing to note is that the entire time I've been working here, I've had smart guides enabled, and you can see them popping up as I work here, which helps in, place objects and center them and such. And if that's not happening on your computer, you're going to want to go up to View, Smart Guides, and have that enabled to help you place objects in the scene. If you're going to bring this into After Effects or Premiere and you want this all on separate layers, the last thing you're going to want to do is go into the layer, select a group, and go to this drop down here and go to Release Layers to Sequence. And that creates all new layers. Just drag those out and you should be good to go. That's what I do when I'm finished creating these type of elements. This has been an introduction to Adobe Illustrator for motion graphic artists. Surely this did not cover all the functions and features of Adobe Illustrator that you may possibly need, but it's something to get you started and to make the program a little less intimidating. This has been Dan from MoGraphicHandy.com. Thanks for watching.